in statistics, we also calculate statistics. So there's two meanings for the word statistics. One of the types of statistics that we calculate are called measures of center, and they are just a way to estimate the middle of a data set. Okay, often we'll say the average, but actually there's three ways to measure the middle, and one of them is called the average in particular. Okay, so let's say we have a class that has students ages 10, 11, 10, 10, 11, 11, 10, and 12. Okay, so we have 8 students all together. Write that down. Okay, the first one we're going to calculate is the mean. The mean is when we're going to sum up all data, and then we're going to divide it by the number of data values. Okay, so let's look at what this would look like for our data. Sum up all the data, we do 10 plus 11 plus 10 plus 10 plus 11 plus 11 plus 10 plus 12. Okay, so let's add them all up. Let's add the 10s first. 10, 20, 30, 40. Okay, so I've got 40 plus, and then 11, 22, 33 plus 12 divided by 8. So let's finish by adding all these together. 40, 73, 85. Okay, and that gives me an answer that's around 10, I believe, or just. Okay, so 10.6 years. Now we might say between 10 and 11 years because we don't know the specific months of these students, so it wouldn't be appropriate for us to say 10.6 usually. Okay, but go ahead and just do what your book is asking you to do or what your teacher suggests, but often we would say 10 to 11. Okay, now the median is another way to measure the middle of the data set. But first we have to order the data from smallest to biggest because it is the exact middle. Okay, so exact middle. So let's order up our data first. We've got 4 10s, and we have 3 11s, and then we have a 12. Okay, and now that we have them lined up, we can go ahead and find the middle of our data set. Now, there is like a mathematical formula for finding the middle, but at 7th grade, often we don't use that formula, and we use this technique instead. So we cross off from the lowest to the biggest, one by one. But you only cross off if you can cross off 2, okay? Don't cross off if there's only 1 to cross off. So 1, we cross off. There's another 2 we can cross off. Okay, now when we get down to 1 in the middle or 2 in the middle, we stop crossing off. Okay, our exact middle is going to be right in between here. So what we do is we're actually going to find the average of the middle two values. Okay, so how do we find an average or a mean? We're going to do add up our values, which is 10 plus 11, and divide by the number of values that we have, which is 2. So that would be 21 divided by 2, which is going to be 10.5. Now that's very close to the 10.6 we got for the mean, isn't it? Okay, so the exact middle of the data set. Now with these two numbers, 10 and 11, one way you can think about it is halfway between 10 and 11. And some of us can do that mentally, but if not, you can always use this formula for backup. Okay, now one thing we can do after we have the data like this is the range. Okay, so the smallest to biggest, so it's helpful to have them in order so we can do this. The range is going to be the biggest minus the smallest. I didn't leave myself room to write that formula properly, did I? Now let's do 12 minus 10, which is 2. And we always want to put some units or context there when we give our, I should have put years here, when we give our answers. So what does the 2 mean? Well, it means 2 years. That means the ages in our classroom are only about 2 years apart, spread out about 2 years for all of our students. The last one is the mode. Now, the mode is really only appropriate for categorical data and sometimes for data like this, where the data doesn't have decimal places. It's just whole numbers. So it is the most frequent or most repeated. So I'm going to say most repeated. The most repeated value, okay? Or the one that happens the most often. So let's look up here. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 10s and 3 11s and only 1 12. So the most repeated value or most frequent value is actually a 10. That's the most common value in our data set. Okay, now I want to look back here at the mean because there's something interesting about the mean. It is very affected by something that we call outliers. Okay, so an outlier is a value that's really high above the regular range, or it's really far below the regular range. So say, for example, we included the teacher in this, all right? And say your teacher is about, let's say 40. So the teacher's 40 years old, and these are all the other students, and we say, well, what's the average age of all the people in your class, including the teacher? Or we include the teacher in that, okay? So let's do this again. That's going to be, we already got this equal to 85, right? So let's just add on that 40. So that will be 125. And now we don't have 8 ages, right? We have 9. So let's divide that by 9. And we get 13.8 years. Okay, so 13.8 years, you might think nothing of that, but nobody in our class is 13. No one is above that. Everyone's below that. It's only the teacher. So by adding this outlier into our data set, it's called skewing. It's moved our average up so it no longer represents the data. So if I gave this in a report and I didn't show the data and I said, oh, the average age in the class was 13.8 years, that would not really be an accurate statement, would it? It'd be very misleading because the average age in that class was not 13 years. The average age was around 10 and a half. Okay, so with our mean, it's very affected by outliers. However, the median and mode are not. So if I were to add the 40 here, this might change where my middle is, right? So let's see, I'm going to do a dot. Let's cross those off. Dot, 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 dot. Okay, and now this 11, it's no longer sharing the middle with the 10. It's actually in the middle all alone. So our median would become 11 years. Okay, now that 11 years is still okay because we have 3 11-year-olds in the class, one 12-year-old, and then there are some that are 10. So 11 is not a misrepresentation of our data and would still be an okay middle value. So that outlier there didn't really affect our median. And the same thing with the mode. If I added 40 here, my mode is still 10. There's still more 10-year-olds than anyone else in the class, so that did not get affected either. All right, let's walk through this from start to finish with a different data set, and let's just see how this all works in practice. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is rank my data from smallest to largest. So 7, 42, 46, 48, 48. Okay, and for this example, I've just been given some data, but I've not really given any context. So I'm not sure what these values represent, and there's no units. Eliminate the outlier. So in this example here, can you see what the outlier is? Something that's maybe far above or below the rest of the data? I hope you've identified this one right here because this guy 7 is way below the rest of the data, which is all in the 40s. All right, now we don't want to like delete that data point forever if we're collecting data, but we don't want to include it when we do our statistics here because it's going to misrepresent the data. All right, so not 7. All right, we're going to get rid of the 7. Now let's find the range. So my range is between 42 and 48. So we're going to do 48 minus 42, which is going to give me 6. Okay, so that's a good representation of the data. If I included that 7, it would be 48 minus 7, which would be 41. And our data, that's not really a good representation of all the data ranging. Measures of center, our mean. Well, let's add up our data without our outlier. So 42 plus 46 plus 48. Okay, and we're going to divide that by 4. Okay, and if we add this together, we've got 184, and we're going to divide that by 4, and if we do that, we're going to get 46. I used a calculator. I didn't do that in my head, okay? Let's do the median. So we've got our data. Let's use it up here, and let's cross off from highest to lowest. All right, let me grab a different color pen here. We've got cross off high and low. I can't cross off anymore. I've got 2 in the middle. So the median is going to be halfway between those. Now, some of you might look at that and say, well, I know what that is. That's 47. And you would be correct. Okay, but if you're not confident to do that yet, let's use our method that we had, which is find the average or the mean of these two. So 46 plus 48 divided by 2. Okay, that would be 80, 94 divided by 2. And if we did 94 divided by 2, we would get 47. Okay, so we've got a median of 47, a mean of 46. Let's look at the mode. What's the most frequent value or the most repeated value? Well, that would be a 48. All right, and that's how we could work through these basic introductory statistics with any group of data.